Hello, I am Mara Jane, and you are listening to The Unseen Perspective. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Unseen Perspective. I am your visually impaired host, Mara Jane, and today we are going to be discussing some accessibility tips from a college student. So, I am visually impaired, so I'm going to focus on that area of accessibility, but some of these will probably be applicable to other disabilities and, whatever else. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, I was thinking just a little bit ago about what I could say in terms of if I had to give advice on day-to-day living and accessibility, finding accessibility in a world that mostly isn't that accessible. So I was thinking about school and just everyday life, walking around in the real world. And, we live in a world that's made for sighted people and made for people who aren't disabled, for lack of a better way of putting it. So we have to, advocate for ourselves a lot and work a lot harder than someone without a disability would just to get the same access to the materials that the world offers. This is especially true both in school and in the workforce, but also just in, everyday living. Of course, this also depends on the extent of your disability and the nature of your disability. So it's different for everyone, but there are some kind of general tips that I felt like I could give to kind of make everybody's lives easier. So if you're blind or otherwise disabled, I hope this helps. But also if you don't have a disability, I hope it helps to kind of know this stuff and have a little more general knowledge so that you can make everyone's lives easier as well. Because I think we'd all be a little more at peace if we just changed up a little bit our habits and, made the world a little more accessible. So let's talk about school first, because I'm a college student and I'm doing it every day, or at least every weekday. So in school, there is usually some program in place that offers accessibility, even in college when it's not legally required anymore. So at Kansas State University, where I go, we have what's called the Student Access Center, and if you sign up for that, you can receive services from them. You can take tests in their testing center, and you can request accommodations in your classes, which is super nice and super simple. You can do it all online, and then you can also meet with your respective Student Access Center staff members. And they're all super nice, so that is lovely. But you can also, just work on your own and try to get the accessibility that you need. But I would strongly recommend, if your school offers it, to sign up with or get connected with whatever accessibility staff they have, because it's going to be a huge help. And in the end, it's just nice to have that support and people who actually get it, and you don't have to explain it to them, at least as much. But some of the accommodations I talked about this last week, but I have extended test time. I magnify a lot of things. I do a lot of things on the computer or on my iPad. I use Braille, but not as much as I should be using it. And I do a lot of audio, especially with novels, because I'm in a couple of classes where we're reading a lot. So I use Bard Mobile. Love Bard Mobile. And I also use Bookshare to get books. Those are mostly Braille books, though. So, yeah, once you go through enough schooling, you're kind of going to know intuitively what you need in your classes, and you can request that, advocate for that with the staff at your school. And you can also do your own part to have those accommodations in your classes or wherever you need them. And this does get easier as the years go on. So it used to be pretty hard for me, especially like speaking up for myself and asking for help, and realizing that asking for help was actually a sign of independence rather than dependence, because it takes a lot of strength and courage to advocate for yourself when you could just be, suffering alone, because that's hard, but in a different way. So it makes sense once you've like experienced it, and I hope you all get it, despite my horrible explanation. But so advocating for yourself is very important, even though it is scary. I would say, kind of push yourself to do that earlier on, just so you have that practice and so it'll be easier later on. And it does get easier the more you do it. So that's the good news. And even though it's scary, the decision to reach out is just that. It's a decision. So no matter how hard it is, you just have to make that choice. So it may not be easy, but it is simple. And you're not always going to be received well by people, which is terrible, but it happens. But there are always people out there who are going to respond positively. And, all the negative experience that you have, like I've had my fair share of negative experiences, but all of that negative experience that you're going to have is worth it for the eventual encounter with someone who is going to respond positively to your needs. That's just my opinion, but I think it is. It's good to stick it out, it builds character. And then eventually, one of these days, you're going to meet with someone who is going to meet your needs, who's going to get it, who's going to listen to you, and it's going to be awesome. And that's what I've been experiencing in recent years, especially in college and in high school. I also had a really good support system. So, yeah, just keep advocating for yourself. Even if it's scary, it'll get easier, and eventually you're going to encounter those people who genuinely want to help you and listen to you and your needs and try their best to understand. And it's very rewarding and it's fun for all parties. But aside from advocating for yourself, there's some things that you can do independently to kind of increase accessibility in school. What I've done is I use my iPad a lot for taking notes and reading articles, just things like that. And I use VoiceOver sometimes, usually to read like articles or essays for right now I'm in a philosophy class and we have to read like an article or an essay every week. And I usually use VoiceOver, which is kind of annoying, but it's fine when it's just like a short thing that you have to read. Like, it's going to be really taxing if I try to do that with my eyes. So, whatever works best for you, and you'll figure that out. Just don't be afraid to try out different things, because you're not going to find what you like most if you just stick with one or two things. And I've had to learn the hard way that, in the end, it's worse to settle than it is to, try new things and find what works, because you're probably going to fail more, for lack of a better term, the more things you try, but also it's going to be so much more rewarding. And that goes for, any area of life. So I think that's just a good rule of thumb. You can't be afraid to try new things. But, yeah, and I use my iPad a lot, and my Braille note, not so much for school, but just, reading. And, like I said, Bard Mobile is awesome. It's been a lifesaver. There's a lot of books available on it. I think they have audio and Braille, and they also have magazines, I think. But if you have some sort of reading disability, you can get a Bard account for free, and that will give you access to a bunch of books and magazines that you can download. Again, that's free, and you can get the app on your phone or your iPad, whatever mobile device. I think you can get it on your computer now too. And you can also get book readers. I have a Victor Stream, which I talked about in an earlier episode, and you can get the big bulky Bard players. I used to have one of those. But yeah, you can listen to books all for free, and then Bookshare also it's a free book service for people with reading disabilities, and it also has Braille, electronic, and audio versions, and I use that sometimes as well. If I need to find quotes or something for an essay in a book, I can just go onto the Bookshare website and open the book right up. But yeah, like I said, I have to read a lot for a couple of my classes that I'm in right now, especially novels. So that has been a wonderful resource, but I also use it just for fun because I love to read. And audiobooks are just so easy because I don't have to strain my eyes. And I used to hate Braille, so I would like refuse to use it. So I think now that's resulted in like less proficiency, which sucks, but so audio has been a go-to for me for leisurely reading and like doing stuff for my classes. But I am getting back into Braille, so don't you fret. And yeah, so those are a couple of really great resources, both for school and for everyday life. Um, I'm kind of rambling. I'm saying a lot of things, but I think the best way to find out what works for you and how to improve your own accessibility in school is just like don't be afraid to try new things, like I said, and also don't be afraid to ask for help. So, building that support system and building your own skills and experience, I think, are going to be the two most vital things on your road to finding accessibility and finding out how to get that for yourself. Um, but school isn't the only place where accessibility is an issue. Um, like in everyday life, especially now that I live on my own in a college campus, like everyday life can be hard as a blind person or a disabled person in a world of people who, the majority of which aren't disabled. So, for example, like the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, has mandated for all public buildings to be, accessible, which means like braille on the signs and ramps and like the handicap buttons on the doors, things like that. Um, and just because it's required does not mean it's a thing everywhere. I had to learn this the hard way when I was trying to find my lab classroom for chemistry last semester because, well, first of all, I went into the wrong building, which is a whole other issue. But there weren't, like, the signs didn't have Braille on them. And so I emailed the Student Access Center and I was like, hey, there was no Braille on the signs in the Chem Biochem building. Like, what's up with that? And I also emailed them about around the same time because some of the talking road things, what are those called? Like, the walking symbols when you cross the street and they talk? Yeah, we have those here, but some of them weren't working, which that also is super nice because it talks to you and I can't see, although now I can see like well enough to look and see if the light is green or red most of the time unless it's like really sunny. So usually I use that, but I know that a lot of visually impaired people and even me in some circumstances like can't really do that. So it is a very nice resource. So I emailed them about that because it wasn't working on one of the street corners. So that's another thing is like if you are experiencing some sort of inaccessibility in like on a college campus or in the workplace, especially in like a public place, tell someone about it because, and make sure you know who to tell, but definitely tell someone about it because otherwise nothing is going to get done about it and you're just going to be suffering in silence, which is lame. So, yeah, definitely tell them about it. Utilize email, utilize phone calls, or you can go see them if you really want to. But, yeah, and I don't even know what I was trying to do with all that information, but yeah. So I also, this semester, I had a classroom where the stairs were like really poor contrast. Like the floor was gray concrete and it was like shiny and the stairs were really hard to see and it was also kind of like a funky pattern too. So every time I would go down the stairs, I would have to like shuffle along with my feet because I could not see where the stairs were, or like I could just barely see it. And so I was like, this isn't even a problem for just blind people. This is just a problem. Like someone's gonna fall and hit their head on the concrete. But I spoke up about it, and over spring break they put like tape or whatever on the stairs, and now they're a lot easier to navigate. So that is very nice. So that's another tip, a big tip. Don't just advocate for yourself, advocate for everybody because if you do that, you're going to help not only yourself, but a lot of people. Whereas if you don't do it, you're not going to help anybody. And like I said, you're just going to suffer in silence, which is lame. Another tip I have for increasing accessibility in public places as an individual, especially for like blind people, is signs. No matter how much you advocate, not all signs are going to have Braille on them, because like room signs and bathroom signs and things like that are one thing, but people are going to put up like paper signs, and there's going to be like those metal signs that like say what a room is and that kind of thing. And not everything's going to have Braille. So using resources like your phone camera or a magnification app, or I found that Seeing AI has gotten really advanced now. It used to be kind of questionable, but it works really well for like reading things short or long. And I think it's better at like recognizing faces now. I don't know. We used to like have really have a good time with it because it would be totally off when it tried to guess your age. So I think I got it to say that I was like a 1-year-old one time. That's the youngest I've ever got it to have me be, but I think the oldest was like 50 something. But yeah, it works really well. I think that's improved too, but it works really well for reading if you're just like trying to read a sign, or even if you want to read like, I wouldn't recommend reading like a book with it, but if you need it real quick to read part of a book or like an article or something, it works really well. I used it a lot for reading my biology textbook last semester, but it did get really old, like listening to the computer voice all the time. But it is a very helpful resource in a pinch, especially. But if you do have some usable vision, then I usually use like my phone camera, and I can zoom in and out on things, which is interesting because people are always like, oh my gosh, like what app do you use to magnify things? And I'm like, oh, I just use my camera. I guess I'm pretty boring, but it works. I mean, that's not really any different than any magnification app you can get. Like, I have a pretty good camera on my phone. Go Samsung. So yeah. Oh, that's another thing is, I should do an episode on that. Which is more accessible, Samsung or Apple? I think it depends on the person, but I use both. So I am very thankful for accessible technology in general these days. That's another thing too, is like we live in an era of like exploding technology and assistive technology in particular, and getting your hands on some of that is going to be really helpful. Obviously everyone's needs are different, but there's like so many different pieces of technology that you can get, and if you're in a position where you can't afford that, there are ways to get those resources like for a discounted cost or even for free. Like, I know in my past experience, I've had my school district pay for a lot of things for me, even just things like my iPad and my AirPods, just things to make school and life in general more accessible. I actually got to keep a lot of those things with me through college, and then obviously when I graduate also I'll still have them. So that's been really nice. A frustrating thing is though, like with technology progressing so fast, if you get a device, it's going to be outdated within a few years, which if you take good care of your technology, that shouldn't be an issue, because my Braille Note Apex, I love that thing, but I get made fun of by my blind friends for using it because it is a very old device that I've had since like 4th or 5th grade, but I have kept it in good working order. I've had to get a new battery for it, but relatively, like, I'm kind of impressed that it's still working after like, oh my gosh, almost 10 years. It's wild, but take care of your technology and it's going to last you longer. And same goes with your chargers, because without your chargers your technology is kind of useless. But yeah, research assistive technology. There's a lot of cool stuff out there, and there's a lot of ways you can get your hands on it, because a lot of it is really expensive, unfortunately. So yeah, to kind of sum up, let's see, what have we talked about? So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and others. look into all that assistive technology and different ways you can get it. Bard Mobile and Bookshare also, and other resources like that. And be sure to get connected with the accessibility staff at your college or your school or your workplace. Even if you feel like you don't need the support, it's probably going to come in handy at some point or another. And even if you don't need it, like, it's still nice to have that support. And also, try out as many new things as you can, or like, I want to say as you're comfortable with, but it's kind of good to step out of your comfort zone. So try as many new things as you can and see what works and stick with that instead of just, doing the same old thing and suffering in silence, which I say that because I'm totally the type of person to do that. I used to do my math worksheets by just like looking at them through my phone and like bending over, which was really bad, but sometimes you can feel stuck in a certain situation and you're like, oh, like no one's gonna help me, and like, this works, so like why would I change? But change is good sometimes, even though it can be scary. And then once you find what works for you, you can stick with that and you'll be a lot more comfortable than you were in the previous situation. It just takes a little more effort to get there. But I don't think I have anything else. I mean, I probably do, but we're running out of time, so I am going to pause here for today. But if you have any questions or feedback for me, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can DM me on Instagram at theunseenperspective2024, or you can email me at theunseenperspective2024@gmail.com. And I would also appreciate the follow on Instagram, and you can find my podcast on Spotify and YouTube. And again, I would ask that you please follow or subscribe in your respective podcast app. I would greatly appreciate it. And I will be back every week with another topic about blindness and the blind experience. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely tune in and stick around. We are going to have a wonderful time together. But until next week, I hope you all have a wonderful day, wonderful morning, evening, night, whenever you're listening to this, and I will see you next time. Bye!